No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. And today I'm in here with Rebecca.
Yes.
How
Hello.
are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. It's nice to have you in here.
Thank you. I'm a little jet lagged.
Are you really? Where are you coming from?
Florida.
Florida. Where exactly?
Orlando.
Nice. How's that?
I love it.
Right. So, no, okay, I got to contextualize this for people. So, basically, Rebecca was supposed to be part of a larger panel episode that we were going to do that was kind of like a porn stars debating more conservative types. And then basically, like the lead porn star who was really planning on taking the helm of the debate from their side got COVID, sent me the screenshot of the test and everything, so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, although I didn't Google reverse image search it yet, so the jury might still be out. But basically, yeah, that's the word on the street, is that she wasn't able to do it. So instead I figured that we would just have a chat and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, interesting. I'm glad to hear that. But okay, so I want to just at least get this out of the way, is that I know you have had like a political transformation over the years. So let's start with just like where you're from and give us a little bit of your upbringing.
Yeah. So I was born in Florida. My parents are both immigrants. I'm first generation American, Brazilian. So both my parents came here from Brazil, met, they had me. And I grew up in a very traditional household. My dad was an entrepreneur, private pilot. He sold airplanes to like very wealthy people. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I was raised that way. And what transpired throughout the years was a lot of infidelity. So that actually is what spawned or created this whole feminist notion, or like this feminist idea for me. I didn't want to depend on a man.
So you saw your dad cheating a lot while you were young. And was your mom open about this to you and what she was dealing with?
I mean, I would see the interactions, how like couples fight. I actually, as a young child, I would tell my mom like, hey, just leave. We can take care of the family. I'll go work. It was like that. So I definitely knew of his affairs and everything like that. It was very out in the open. And that's really what, triggered that whole thing for me. I saw my mom as a traditional woman who literally would do everything for my dad. Cook, clean, breakfast, lunch, and dinner served like on a platter.
And he was still going to go get drunk and fuck around.
Well, my dad never drank.
Really?
So,
I'm just assuming that was part of it. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Shout out to him for that at least.
Yeah. But yeah, he traveled a lot. And it was the nature of their relationship. I believe they had a codependent relationship, which I don't think is healthy. I'm in a different type of relationship as my parents.
So they're codependent. They were codependent because they're both sort of like
they need each other.
Mutually like need each other, but it's like fundamentally unhealthy is what that gets at.
Exactly. Okay. And then so I grew up, again, immigrant parents wanting the best for me. I went and pursued my mechanical engineering degree. I actually studied robotics. So that was my upbringing. And then I went to go work in the oil and gas industry, actually here in California.
Okay.
So I lived here first.
And so are you becoming fully indoctrinated into the woke occult throughout your college experience?
Actually, no.
Okay.
And that's really interesting because I'm in my 30s.
Okay, so you're a little old for that?
Yes,
okay,
yeah.
You missed it. Yeah.
Me
too.
Yeah, we're looking at our college experience and it's...
I didn't have a ton of college, but what I did, there was no memory of... But I used to go to hardcore shows and there was a lot of like anarchist pamphlets and vegan things being given out. So that's when I first kind of got exposed to that sort of thing.
I went to aviation university. So people wanted to either be pilots or engineers. Like I had a lot of friends that wanted to be NASA astronauts and a lot of friends that wanted to be pilots. So I was in a very specific type of school. They call it the Harvard of the skies, in some weird name.
Wow. It's like the chicken of the sea.
Yeah, basically. Like, come on now.
No offense. I don't know if comparing you to tuna is bad.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
And then I went to go work for oil and gas company for 3 years. I worked on offshore and onshore rigs here, Santa Barbara off the coast. I worked in Long Beach, Seal Beach, and I also got to travel to Alaska, different places all around the world. I lived in Abu Dhabi, and it was a great experience, but I was obviously one woman on a rig in the middle of the ocean in Alaska with like hundreds of men, and that was a really awkward situation.
In what sense? Just them being creepy all the time, or?
Yeah, these guys would be on a rig for 4 weeks at a time, so 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So when I actually arrived, so they helicoptered me in because I was an engineer for the platform. So they helicoptered me in, and I had just men waiting on it was on the helideck.
I'm picturing that Cher video where she's dancing with all the Navy dudes.
Yes, that.
Not that you would have been dressed like that, but
no,
right.
That, but like men that are covered head to toe in oil and not sexy whatsoever, not a good look.
So you're a girl who's been treated, like a normal girl maybe, or not to say you're not more attractive than the average girl, but you've got like a normal amount of attention throughout your life, and then all of a sudden you're on this rig and it's just like you're like a savior to them.
Yes, and I would be, I would have to sleep with the pipe wrench, my knife, and they put me, because they weren't equipped on the oil rigs for women, they would keep me in a separate room. Actually, the platform, like the manager's office, they would just put a little cot in there, and that's where I would sleep, and they would lock the door.
And so you were just scared of being assaulted in your sleep, and that's why you kept these weapons on you?
Basically, yes.
Did anything in particular happen that made you think that was a real opportunity or a likely scenario?
I've had situations, not on the platforms, but like on regular jobs that I would go to, where basically some guy wanted to, have sex with me in the truck, and I would repeatedly say no, like, we're in a professional setting, this is very inappropriate.
Right.
And then he actually threatened me and then reported me to my HR. And then because I told him that I would basically stab him.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And so were you in a relationship or anything at this time?
No.
Or were you just determined to not have anything to do with any of these guys in this way?
I actually, that's when like the repulsion for men really started for me. I wonder why.
That's understandable, to be honest. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty terrible experience.
But, I did that for 3 years, and then I left. And I wanted to start my own company, so I moved to New York. And that's when really things just picked up for me, in the sense of like I became a hardcore feminist. I became like really indoctrinated into like the woke left.
But how you started your own business doing what in New York?
Yeah, so I started an airport app. It was called Ment. And we basically helped people determine their wait times, and we would reward them with like different like coupons and stuff to Hudson News and things like that. But we released in JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark, and then I had like a small buyout, if you will.
Okay.
Someone acquired it and then bought me out, essentially.
Okay.
And that was my first company. So I raised money for that, had co-founders, like it was a whole thing. And then I started a second company after that. And yeah, I raised money, was in, publications and stuff like that. It was an interesting experience. I was very much into the hustle culture of New York.
1 second. Can you just look mad for a second for the thumbnail?
Oh.
We'll edit this out. Oh, yeah, just like kind of look like you're yelling at me or something. Yeah, that's good. Just, we got to sell this thing. Yeah. I'm going to look really pissed off, too. I don't even know what emotion that was exactly.
Don't you hate thumbnails?
But this is like the only time I think I've ever like stopped the podcast to yeah. So
don't you hate thumbnails though?
I hate that it's the norm for thumbnails to show massive amounts of like emotion.
Yeah, it's stupid.
It's just corny. It makes like the whole genre look bad to the average person. Because
Exactly.
like even like respectable content creators in many different fields of content are like just making themselves look like fucking idiots in the thumbnail.
I know.
Myself included.
That's how I feel too. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. But here we have to do it.
I've been like algorithmically told that this is how I should behave as a 39-year-old man.
Yes, same. And it's really awkward.
Yeah. I feel that way like all the time when I think about how women behaved when I was younger and then how women behave now. And it's like, as someone who, you know, is totally down with looking at girls half naked on Instagram, it's fucking great. But the fact that this is just like women have changed fundamentally because of what the algorithm rewards.
Yes.
As a porn star, I can say that all these fucking girls look like porn stars on Instagram just because it gets a lot of likes.
Well, it's interesting how all of the faces of these women started looking the same. Like, what ethnic background are these faces? It's crazy because you see different women, right? Like Instagram models, and they all have the same face. They all go to the same doctors, apparently. And it's like this cookie cutter.
And you know what
aesthetic.
might make you think even worse about that is like my girl was showing me last night like this app that she downloaded just because other girls that she knows use it, and she'll like use it on her photo and then just be like, oh no, I can't do that. Like it's too much. But it was a photo of her with no makeup on, and she uses this filter, and she looks like she just got her makeup professionally done. And the average dude has no idea that this is fake. It didn't look fake to me at all. I would have 100% believed that it was a real photo. And I mean, that's just crazy. These girls have apps to make them all look the same. Like, but that's reality. Yeah.
No, I mean, even just plastic surgery. Like it is insane to me the amount of effort women will go to look a certain way or have a certain aesthetic. And what's crazy is if you look at the Kim Kardashian thing that's happening now, she's completely like skinny as in like 90s
she
heroin,
took her butt implants out, I believe,
and the boob implants.
Right. She's on the Ozempic shots.
Exactly. And what it's doing is making other women want to follow suit. Now, if you try to look up Ozempic and all of those other things, you can't get access to them anymore. They're like for the people that actually need them, diabetics, severely obese people, they can't get the medication that was created for them because Instagram models now want to look like Kim Kardashian.
But isn't it kind of based of Kim to be out here being anorexic because it's like so frowned upon by like the liberals and the woke people?
I mean, it's crazy that
it's the least body positive thing she could do.
Well, all of it. I mean, I hate body positivity. We can get into that. Yeah. It's the worst thing that's ever happened.
Let's table that for now.
Table that. Fat acceptance.
Right.
Body positivity.
But okay, we'll come back to Kim. But so okay, you moved to New York, and how would you say that you went about sort of like getting indoctrinated and sort of taking on this blue hair ideology?
I literally did that. I just shaved my head and dyed it blue. I'm just kidding. No, I did do that though. That was a part of the aesthetic as well. So I attended a lot of women's conferences, and especially in the entrepreneurial tech space, it is like going to these conferences, going to these women's groups is very popular. A lot of female CEOs do it. It's weird. Okay. And all they do in these groups or in these conferences is talk about how men are trash, how the patriarchy is taking away all of our money, all of our funding, how we are so oppressed and that we, you know, don't have the same rights as the white man, and how they take all of our everything. Like they're taking the seat at the table. You need to fight for your seat at the table. You need to fight for your rights and all of this other stuff. And the more you listen to it and hear other women talk about it, you're like, yeah, like we've been oppressed. You're right. And I'm like, this is afterwards, like once you start looking at it, you're like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever believed in my life.
Right.
retrospectively.
Because I'm sure you saw the Vice feminism debate where Pearl basically
Yes.
said, like, name a way in which you as a woman have been oppressed or you've been unable to, have certain opportunities. And even in the panel episode that I was on earlier, I said that I think that generally women have it easier in our society than men. And the main defense that gets brought up is like, okay, well, a woman has to be scared of a man, beating her up and raping her, walking home from work or whatever, which, to be fair, yes, 100%. That's the thing, though, is it's physical size and not much else, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that you have to understand feminism was really never rooted in equality. If that's what they tell the public, but it is about supremacy. It is about overtaking men and basically deleting man as a sex. Just doing away with them.
They're like the white supremacists where they get together and they talk about what they really think.
Yes.
And then they will kind of communicate to the public and be like, no, we just want equality or whatever.
Yes.
But let's be real. Feminists or even like if you look at something like Black Lives Matter, I mean, they're advocacy groups. They come together to make the world better for their specific group that they represent. And they're absolutely not going to stop at equality or whatever because that's so vague and impossible to identify. Their work it's like the NRA.
Yeah.
The NRA is not going to stop fighting for more access to guns for people. That's just what they do. And if gun rights become extremely expansive, they're going to fight for them to be even more expansive.
Oh, 100%. And the thing with feminism is that it's baked into our culture from the time we're like out of the womb. Right. So like if you look at TV shows, if you look at just things that we grew up with, the man, the patriarch of the family is this dopey, dumbass kind of guy, right? He doesn't trust his own instincts. He doesn't lead. The wife leads the household. And if you notice, the smartest person in the room is the daughter.
Are you talking about The Simpsons right now?
I'm talking about The Simpsons, Family Guy. Literally any, like even the sitcoms that you see, I don't even remember. Full House is a good one. You always had the daughter, Stephanie, coming up with all of these solutions. The guys, the caretakers, right? They all play these dopey men that like didn't really know what was going on. But don't worry because Stephanie has an idea of how to do something. So just growing up and seeing how women and like female superheroes, right? Just like the way they create these characters and, it's the strong female lead. And it's just in everything that we see.
Yeah, there's a new thing that's been coming out that I started to notice on my own. And then recently I've seen people writing about it, which is this thing that will happen in like various Netflix shows. And it happened in The Queen's Gambit. It's probably like the best example I could think of. That there's just like a black woman who comes into her life at a certain point.
Yeah.
And she is perfect in every way, the most redeemable character that you could possibly think of, not conflicted in any way. She enters into the storyline, does some really good stuff that I can't even remember, a bunch of positive stuff, and then she disappears. She's like the most uninteresting but clearly redeemable character in the show. And that's like this weird woke instinct is to like just insert perfect black characters into these series. And I actually read a quote from like an anonymous movie like screenplay writer or whatever, where it's basically they said it's an unsaid rule in Hollywood that you can never have like a true black villain in a movie. It's just like really looked down upon.
That's absolutely correct. You see it. It's like these type, like they put these stereotypes on people. So it's like the strong female lead. It's the, like you said, it's this black savior almost in a sense,
Which is, it's my issue with that is not that, it makes black people look too good. It's that it oversimplifies the existence of black people. Why shouldn't black people be able to be complicated on screen just like anybody else?
Yeah. The whole thing is stupid. And the thing is that we buy into it as the consumer. We're still watching these shows.
But that formula you just said that accurately describes The Simpsons and Family Guy and Married with Children, I never even thought about that my whole life. And when I think about the early 90s when The Simpsons was written, I don't think about feminism having like a big impact on our culture. Clearly the world was a lot more misogynistic at that time. But I mean, that is kind of eerily true. Although I also wonder if it's kind of because the male character is usually the lead. It's usually the strongest character who's making the most jokes. And if he's virtuous, it's kind of like not funny. Like all the
True.
things we're laughing at Homer Simpson for, or Al Bundy or whatever, is basically like, oh, he's such a piece of shit. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's kind of like nothing funny about somebody being like really a good person.
That
right?
is true. That is true. But it's just the trend, or it's something that it's the pattern that I've noticed and other people have noticed as well, is that, you know, it's just baked in so early. And even just how they've changed. Like, I was a very tomboy type of girl. I was one of 2 daughters, right? So I grew up, my dad loved engines, he raced cars, and he was a pilot and all that stuff. So I really liked those things. I was just into like robotics and building and tinkering, right? If you had placed me now in that same situation, I would be just like lined up to be medically changed, given all the puberty blockers, all of that stuff, because that's what society is pushing to young children. Like, think about it. Like, there is no tomboy anymore. There isn't a girly gay guy, right? Because now you have to be one or the other. And for a group to say, oh, gender is fluid and, you know, you can be whatever you want, they're very like systematic. Like, oh, if you play with girl toys as a boy, you're definitely transitioning into a woman.
We just had a whole flock of trans women in here, and I mean, you saw them. You could probably say that they all have clearly put more attention into the way they look than almost every biological woman you've ever met, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at Dylan Mulvaney. He has been a very popular TikToker. He took on this whole identity as being this like bimbo. Think about you know, Legally Blonde, or even White Girls, the movie. That's what he's playing, that character of the ditzy blonde girl. Oh, this is a tampon. What do you do with this? Like, are you joking? And it's that, to me, is more patriarchal, and I use air quotes because I think these words have been overused, and misogynistic than a man just buying dinner for a woman or holding the door.
But do you think many women are so feminist that they're fighting against men holding the door or paying for dinner? Because I feel like that seems like a part of feminism that women are glad to go along with.
Yeah, no, they are. Well, here's the thing. There's so many types of feminists out there, and it's kind of crazy to think of like all these different types. So there's like the girl boss feminist, there's the TERF, for trans exclusionary radical feminist,
right.
There's, you know, the black feminist, the Latina feminist, all different types of feminists, right? But they really just they don't like men. They're like, a lot of them just don't like men. They don't like the idea of men. They don't like the presence of men. I was very much like that. I didn't date much because I was so disgusted being around men. And that's something that was, I think, they played into my story. People would play into that.
I had a wild experience a couple of years ago where one of the employees here, a woman, I was with her at an apartment building full of a bunch of her friends who I would describe as like New York City liberals. And I said something like vaguely offensive, you know, that I can't remember at all, but I immediately got a reaction from them that let me know that I already should have been on edge because I'm a man. I should not be even thinking about pushing the limits of what's okay to joke around about. And that B, as soon as they were offended, that I should be very concerned about them being offended.
Correct.
And I don't think I like went into full detail on this, but I was thinking about it afterwards. Like, no, my life philosophy is that I should be pushing at the limits of what's funny at all times. And yeah, sure, maybe once in a while I'll have to apologize or clean it up. But if it's for the intended purpose of comedy, then everything is pretty much on the table. And that also, if you're offended by it, that is clearly your problem, and I don't give a fuck. And that in that way, that shows my privilege of not having been in a normal workplace over the last 20 years, because that is something that I'm sure every dude has to get used to, every woman as well. But that it's the kind of thing where if I had to work at Microsoft 50 hours a week, I would probably just have to go into the mentality of, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not displaying any parts of my personality. I'm not joking around with a girl. I'm just going to go to work, do my job, and then my personal life will be something that I do completely outside of this because I'm just an offensive person by nature.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at the workplace culture now, everything is PG. There isn't that banter that happens between coworkers anymore because of the fact that a woman can me too a man that she works with, and literally he's just having friendly banter with her, and she thinks, oh, that took it too far. That's absolutely insane to me. And I think it's like, that is what we're seeing, especially in New York or in big cities. Men just don't want to participate in the conversation. And they're choosing not to hire some types of women because they exert this type of, you know, combative energy, or they're always offensive. They want, like, when I was hiring people, I would just watch their mannerisms. I'm not even paying attention to what they're necessarily saying. I'm just watching how they're moving, like, you know, how they're responding, how they're reacting, because you can tell a lot by a person's movements what they are like. You know what I mean? And the combative woman is like, you know, she's just like, it's everything like this, you know, the fists. I used to do this a lot, right? Not fisting. You know?
On here, that might be construed differently.
I know.
No,
That's
but
why.
you know what that makes me think of too, and it's an unintended consequence of that is I've been in the room and having conversations with a bunch of different dudes who are CEOs of various businesses, and one of the things that comes up in conversation is that you absolutely can't afford to hire woke people.
Exactly.
It's just like they're too much of a liability. One person gave me the example of a guy that he hired who was this sort of like effeminate black dude, and he figured, you know, okay, whatever, he's just like a gay dude or whatever, like who cares? And then like after a couple of days of the job, he started telling the boss that we needed to hire more women of color in this particular department. And his response was, we don't need anyone in that department. What the fuck are you talking about? But then, like, you know, he starts to get the drift or the gist of it, which is that this guy, like, is planning on implementing serious structural change to this business.
Yes.
He had to write him a fucking settlement before he sent him on his way, you know?
Oh, wow.
Which, so to me, that was a learning experience just from hearing him say that. Yeah, like, I guess he had to offer him some kind of buyout to just get him out of there. But, you know, anybody who seems like they're really going to hit you with that kind of shit is just too much of a liability. You got to be really careful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just listen to what they say, too. If they're talking about privilege, if they're talking about, you know, there's just woke words that they use. Patriarchy, I like I said, it's so overused. And you just have to, you just say, okay, thank you for your time. Like, because the thing is, hiring them just like, you know, you have friends with experiences, it's just going to give you more and more headaches. And when these people get together, they are like meeting outside for coffee, and they're planning and coordinating moves within your company. And then they are also the ones inside of the companies, like you see with Twitter, what happened with Elon Musk, right? He had to fire all these people because they're doing stuff behind the backs of management, right? And they're suppressing content just like they did on Twitter. And these just organizations, you know, it happened with Starbucks. All of these woke people are protesting their job. Like, your job is to make me coffee and like go home.
Are you anti-union though?
Am I anti-union? I wouldn't say that. I think the union's been exploited. And I don't want to get killed by a mob boss, so.
It's weird because on one hand, I can completely understand the urge of the Starbucks employees to unionize, since I'm sure that, you know, them threatening or attempting to unionize is probably a big part of why they've been able to get more and more acceptable terms over the years. But at the same time, when the idea comes around of my employees unionizing, it's just like, what? Like, this is like unfathomable to me. It's like, oh fuck, that's gonna be a pain in the ass. I'm gonna have to replace everybody who had this bright idea. Yeah, like I'm not fucking going for that. But yeah, I don't know. It's like once a company gets big enough, it's like it gets harder and harder to like justify not allowing them to unionize.
No,
I don't know.
I get that, but just the woke population of your company is most likely the not your company, but
Right.
in general, is probably the most problematic part of the company. And it could definitely take it down.
Yeah.
Or just infiltrate more hiring practices that will get more people in the company, especially put them in HR positions. That's not good.
Yeah, and when I was laughing at this dude for wanting to, like, you know, diversify the workforce or
yes.
whatever, it's like, I don't want to act as if I don't think that that's ever an acceptable goal. But, like, you know, if you are like 3 days in at this company and, like, you know, you're just like fundamentally trying to change, like, because for me, sometimes I'm cognizant of the racial breakdown of my employees, at least in the sense that I feel like I have an acceptable mix of different races, which I wouldn't necessarily even consider all that important if it wasn't for the fact that I'm like covering hip hop. So I feel we need a diverse, you know, crew here that can kind of, you know, be able to have opinions about everything. But I just think that also, when you're talking about the editors, it's like, who the fuck cares who's doing it? Like, you want me to hire this guy that I totally fuck with just because he's not the right race? That's crazy.
No, it happens. It happens.
So, okay, when did you start to, or how deep did you get into this, and when did you separate yourself or start to get red pilled per se?
I was very deep into the feminist movement, feminist ideology. I shaved my head, dyed it multiple colors. I was like at protests. I was at marches. I was leading conferences. I was mentoring women about this, especially in the, you know, entrepreneurial space, hustle culture space, because you have to distinguish between that because there's so many forms of feminism. So I was very in it, very like hardcore feminist at that time. And then it was about, I want to say 2018 that I started reading Jordan Peterson, and that really changed the way I started to think, where I was literally putting all the accountability on everyone else and not taking any sort of accountability or responsibility for any of the actions that I've taken in my life. Everything was everyone else's problem, and I didn't have to deal with it. So I was the victim of my circumstances, and you had to appease all of my problems, basically. And when I read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, or of Life, I forget what the book is like, he's saying, you know, clean your room and don't lie, or at least try not to. And these principles that he's talking about just changed my mentality. I'm like, wow, okay, that's a novel thought. Like, don't lie. That's so, you know what I mean?
Did you feel like you were consciously lying during your time as a feminist, that you were kind of forced to like lie, just go along with things because they were convenient?
Myself. I was lying.
So you think you knew deep down inside that you didn't believe the shit that you were sort of buying into with that?
Yeah.
But it's beneficial to you and your identity group to do it. So it's got to be kind of easy to roll with the punches, right?
Well, that's what I was dealing with, was the fact that was I oppressed? No, not at all, right? But I had to believe that I was oppressed. I had to believe that it was my ethnic background. I had to believe that it was because I was a woman and it wasn't based off of my merits, right? So like, even just going into a conversation, I'm like, why am I here? You know? And I would start asking these questions to myself. I'm like, is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm a minority woman? Is it because I earned my place here? Like, what is the reason why I'm here? And so that to me really sparked a lot of other questions. And, you know, I just had to break away from that, because I was, at the end of the day, what was happening was I had my mask on. I had this feminist Becca, you know, hardcore, strong woman, independent woman mindset, boss babe, like front, right? But when I got home, I took off the mask and I went to took a shower, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most exhausting thing. And I was depressed, and I was drinking, and I was like using, and I was doing all this other stuff to just numb the fact that I had to go outside and put this mask on and be like, okay, time to be strong, time to be independent, time to be a boss babe. And inside I was just broken. I was a miserable person coping with the fact that I had, like, that's what I had to do. That's what I had to do. And I had to put on this show for everyone. And if I didn't perform the way that everyone expected me to perform, then I was, kicked out of the group.
I had this girlfriend up until maybe like a year before my current fiance. And, she went to school for a long period of time. She got a job making $100,000 a year, which I remember her being extremely proud of because she mentioned it within like my first date going on
Yes.
with her or whatever. But then, she just casually mentions one day, like, oh, like the doctor prescribed me some stuff for like
Yes.
this depression shit that I'm going through. And I'm like, what did he prescribe you? And she tells me that she got prescribed Xanax. And I'm like, you realize that all the fucking drugged up rappers that I know and shit, that's what they're on. And that, like, I'm like, you do not want to be a fucking person taking this shit every day. But the reality is that her existential dread and depression that she was getting from just going to her job 8 hours a day and getting paid well for it was that intense. Like she was very much, I think, going against her nature, where she probably wanted to find fulfillment from something greater, but she had been convinced her whole life that she had to go after this sort of, career-oriented goal. And I remember one time we started talking about the pay gap and, the lack thereof, in my opinion. And she said she immediately Googles an article about it and sends it to me. And I read half of it and I say, this article actually is arguing what I said, which is that there is a small pay gap, but that the majority of it is explainable by things that are, clearly not related to systematic misogyny or whatever. And she didn't like that. And then that argument was just like deaded. It was clear that this was not appreciated coming from me, that if I said something like this, that really like that this is just the kind of thing that was not up for discussion. That women were oppressed, women are treated badly in society. If you feel differently, you're a fucking monster.
Yeah.
And I've had not a ton of, most of the girls I've spent time with throughout my life didn't really have this particular brain disease, but through talking to her, I realized like this is like a different thing that I haven't really had to deal with.
Yeah.
And she's like successful in a lot of people's minds in a way in which like a lot of girls I've spent time with throughout my life weren't. She had a good job.
Yeah,
she was miserable.
Well, that's exactly the life that I was living. I was a miserable person. And it was interesting because it was a family member who told me that I was a terrible person and a miserable person to be around. And I will never forget it. And I will thank that person like till the day I die, because that conversation changed my direction. Like I was already changing, but knowing that people who loved me thought I was a miserable person to be around, that completely changed my mindset to like everything. I'm like, I am not oppressed. I'm not this, fragile person that is going to break every time someone criticizes me or, challenges what I'm saying or even makes fun of me. That's the thing about the woke left and feminists and just anyone who identifies in that side of the world.
Right.
Everything is up for offense. And if you say the slightest thing, they will take it offensively and then they will run with it. And then they'll call you a racist, a bigot, having internalized misogyny is what I get all the time.
Right.
Pick me.
I hate this pick me thing because it implies that if your personality or your existence is something that the opposite sex or whoever you're attracted to might find attractive, that you therefore are doing something bad by like sort of representing that identity, right? This is insane.
And that's what's going against nature. And misery loves company. Feminists love to be miserable and love other women to be miserable like them. So now that I'm a stay-at-home mom, I do YouTube, right? I have a great channel, but I do that part-time. I'm not here producing content every hour, like within the hour. I edit my own videos. I do all that stuff. But my time is spent primarily with my family. I cook my husband breakfast and dinner. I am with my 11-month-old daughter. And I share my experiences of leaving feminism and hopefully getting women to see that there's another side to this, right? That you don't have to be miserable going to, like, working that 9 to 5 job, taking those antidepressants, being on birth control, all of these stuff that all these things that they have pushed us to our whole lives, right? You can break free of that. There's other things that you can do. There's other ways to pursue purpose and, your place here on the planet. And, my life, I ended up being a stay-at-home mom. So I went from being this like engineer to being the CEO of this company and multiple companies and starting all this stuff to now I'm a stay-at-home mom. And my life is so much better. Like I have this relief, and my husband's like, I got you, girl. Like I'll take care of you. And like what I do on YouTube, what I make on YouTube is good money, but it's still supplemental money to him, and he leads in our family, and it's such a better dynamic than a lot of these women want. They want to be like the head of household. They want to choose these men that they can effeminate and like they can just be the boss of.
Right.
And then they get pissed.
I remember seeing a Christopher Hitchens interview back in the day, and he basically was saying that women can work, but his won't.
Yeah.
And the interviewer was horrified. Like, how could you possibly say that? And he said, no, I mean, if a woman wants to work, that's fine. But the type of family that I'm trying to raise, I would rather have a wife who stays at home and takes care of the house and the kids. Yeah. And that's just the kind of arrangement that I'm comfortable with. And the fucking host could not wrap her head around the fact that to him, a traditional family unit was the ideal thing. And I mean, from my perspective, like I'm 39, I had a kid at 37 or 36. And so I would say that I basically spent like 20 years straight, just like hustling, trying to make money, trying to be successful as hard as I could fucking do it. And then finally, when I actually reached the point where I looked at my life and I said, okay, you have a little bit of room to chill. Then I finally had a kid. Yeah. And it's like, I find so much more fulfillment and like long-term just like joy from having a 2-year-old, which is like the most common experience for any fucking person on earth, than I get from being a person who has a YouTube channel with 4 million subscribers, which still is like, when I think about my life, I'm like, this is probably, cool. It's like the thing I'm probably most proud of, but then I have a kid and it's all of a sudden like, no, this just means emotionally so much more to you. And I could have easily like stayed in that sort of vortex of just working and working and working. And I would have looked up at some point and I would have been 50 or 60 and I would have been like, what the fuck? Because I was just listening to Sam Harris podcast that he did with this guy who's part of the Harvard study where they basically are just tracking tons of men since like the 30s, monitoring their lives. And one of the main things is that no matter how successful these guys become, by the time they reach 75, 80 years old, or when they're getting closer and closer to dying, that when they ask them, like, what means the most to you, they say, my family, my relationships, my wife, my kids. And as soon as I heard that, I told my girl, I'm like, we're not stopping at 2 kids. We need like 3, 4 kids, because I'm just picturing myself at 85. Like they said, nobody says that it's their fame or their wealth that is making them love life. And I see that all the time with my parents, where my parents are like 70 and what the fuck they were doing in their career at 20 or 30, who gives a fuck? My dad was a teacher at a private school in his like, late 20s. He probably hasn't thought about it in years. Like, who gives a fuck? Like, it's the family means something to you later on in life, I 100% agree with you. And the fact that your entire demeanor changed when you were talking about your family is so cool, because it, like, pay attention to that. Like, I want the audience to pay attention to that, because you just changed up completely, and it's that's what happens when you have a family. Like you said, I don't want to stop at 1 or 2. I want a couple more. Let's hope that my body is capable of doing that. You have how many right now?
I have 1.
One,
yeah.
Okay.
And we're working on 2.
How old?
11 months. Okay. She's 11 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question for me and my girls. Do we sandwich them all together or do we spread them out?
Well, the first 2, it depends how
2-year-old.
No, but your wife is how, or your
31.
Okay. So now we're talking about like
she might have just said 30. Fuck. Did I ruin that?
Oh my god.
No, she's 31, 32. Fuck. All right. Sorry.
Okay, in like early 30s, right? So our eggs basically like just deplete over time. Like, you have a certain amount that you're born with, and then over time you just lose them every single cycle. So that's what I'm working against, the clock right now, because I'll tell everyone I'm 34 years old. And so I would like another child. I would like them together so that they can grow up as like best friends and, beat each other up. That's how my sister and I were. But if you are trying to have the third, space that one out a little bit further, right? So you have the two close together and then the third one, and then you have 3 and 4, you can put them together so they'll grow up together.
Yeah, I wish I need to figure out
ticket.
the exact date that she's going to go into menopause so we can just sort of plan to hammer out a few more right before that.
I mean, menopause is way like in her 50s or like late 50s, but by the time we reach 40, the percentage goes down. I think it's like 24% chance of getting pregnant, and that the viability is there so that they don't end up with any issues, or that the actual act of, creating an embryo can happen because of all of these genetic things that can happen when sperm meets the egg. And so, it's a race against time at this point, but that's what happens with the feminist movement too, is that they're saying, listen, you just go on birth control. You can have sex with whoever you want. You can be as promiscuous as you want. Go girl, go ham, have sex, push everything out until your late 30s, then you can have kids and you're going to be just fine after 15 to 18 years of birth control, like totally fine.
So when you just get
worries.
off the birth control, it's very hard to get pregnant?
It's not as easy as women like to believe that it is. And not only that, but all of the things that have happened hormonally to your body. So if you're taking hormonal birth control, it is actually a very bad thing. And I urge women, especially if they're young, to get off birth control as fast as possible, or try non-hormonal birth control like the copper IUD. But hormonal birth control is the worst thing a woman can put in her body. And it's the first thing that a OBGYN or like a doctor will prescribe a girl at 15 years old that
Just because
has
it's
hormonal acne.
Because it's profitable for them, or
Yes.
because it's just sort of an easy fix?
Yeah, all of it is because they don't treat the reason why you're having hormonal flare-ups. Like, a woman on birth control is, first of all, your brain chemistry completely changes. Your hypothalamus decreases. It shrinks, and that controls all your nervous system. So basically, everything that shoots signals to your body to ovulate and whatever, all just dampen down, right? And then not only that, but depression, anxiety. Women feel like they're not themselves. They feel like they're like a shadow of themselves. So I was on birth control and I took it for about 2 months, and I literally had suicidal ideation. And I've never been suicidal. I'm sorry, I've never been whatever. Unalivable. Sorry for the editing team.
That's fine.
I never have had those thoughts. And as soon as I went on birth control, it was like, I want to throw myself in front of a bus. It was the weirdest thing that I've never experienced it before. And I knew immediately that it was the birth control, and I went off.
Yeah, my girl has always refused to get on it, and
Yes.
we've been doing it for 6 years, and somehow the pull-up method has been effective. But
Yeah, and also,
I don't know if I can recommend that to everybody else.
No, but tracking your ovulation is very simple. It's not very simple, but it's simple for women who have regular schedules, right? And the thing that we have to understand is that women say, oh, I have PCOS, I have irregular periods and stuff like that. And the issue is that they're not treating the underlying condition of why you have irregular periods or why you have PCOS, right? They'll just say, here, take this hormonal birth control, and it will just regulate you, and we'll just make sure we get the right dosage for you. But like it just throws off. It's basically like giving your body estrogen and progesterone, right? And it depends on what type of pill, but it makes your mucus like more sticky so the sperm can't go up. I'm giving you guys like a whole lesson.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Or it just makes you not ovulate. So your scent completely changes and you desire men that are beta males.
Really?
Yes. And so when women, and I've seen this firsthand with multiple women, they get off birth control to have their first baby and they're completely repulsed by their husband. They don't like them. They don't like the way that they smell. They're disgusted by their husbands, but they're like, I need to get pregnant. But I'll have sex with him, but I'm repulsed by him. And so you see like the woman's whole, like, you know, she's attracted to this man. She's been with this man for her whole life, was on hormonal birth control. And right off of that, she doesn't like her husband. She thinks he's disgusting. It's the birth control that is changing your chemistry. It's changing your, like, literally all your hormones and the pheromones. So, you know, you are attracted, like we as people are attracted to more, as a woman, I'm attracted to a masculine man, a man who has masculine features, right? And a woman on birth control, she's attracted to a man that is similar to her. So he has a scent that like aligns with her scent, but they're not biologically, like, how do I say that? They're not biologically compatible, right? And so it's just like these women that are disgusted by their husbands, walking around, probably banging other guys and having side pieces, and the guys step out of the relationship to, you know, it becomes a mess. And it's all because women decided, or not women, but like doctors decided to be very profitable and change women.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot to play with. And when you're saying all this, it's making me think about the fact that when I was in high school, I remember hearing over and over and over, like, so and so, this girl got on birth control, and I'd be thinking like, she's not having sex, like that girl, there's no way she's fucking anybody. And then hearing like, no, she's like got on it to regulate her period. Like even I think my sister at one point, and I was like shocked, like she's on birth control, she's 15, and then they're like, no, it's like to regulate her period. I'm like, oh, they do that, okay,
but why? Like you don't even have a period long enough to regulate. And that's the thing is like doctors. So what's crazy is that when I was pregnant with my daughter, I went to a regular OBGYN, and this was the time of the height of Covina. And they told me, they're like, you need to take the jab. Right. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that because I'm pregnant and we don't know, like there's no long-term studies about this, yada, yada, yada. She goes, this is much safer than the birth control pill. And I was like, I don't know if she knew how crazy that was to hear, but you're giving birth control pills to 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, and they're taking it for a long time. And you're just cool with it, like that's perfectly fine. Like you don't have any issues, like about the fact that this girl has now gained 20 pounds, or that she's depressed and going on all these antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills, or just like a slew of other conditions that start popping up because women take this birth control pill.
Right.
It's crazy.
Wait, okay, so just to get back to this part of the tale. No, it's good. It's very interesting because I had no idea that birth control had such a sinister subtext to it. So I actually really want to Google that more and learn more about all that. But I just wanted to ask, when you made your separation from the all these woke groups or the feminist groups that you were a part of, what did that look like? Was there ever like a messy exit or anything?
Yeah, I had to lose a lot of friends. I lost a lot of friends. Thankfully, my parents were more conservative, so they were like, yes, thank God, like you're finally, you're not sick anymore. But yeah, I lost a lot of friends. People hate me, and it was a very messy thing. but I've never changed. I love people, right? I love you, whoever you are, I love you. And if you're my friend, like, I'm going to treat you like my friend, and we have no beef. People bring in politics or, things that I've talked about on the internet, and they bring that up in the conversation. I'm like, well, if you want to have this conversation, we'll have the conversation, but you can't be offended because you brought up the conversation.
Right. At this point, I'm so used to having conversations with people that I like fundamentally disagree on large sections of life with, that it's almost like hard for me to even remember that people are going to give a fuck about that. Like, there's a certain white identitarian that might be part of a debate on the podcast soon. And it's like the idea that I'm supposed to like scorn him and like act like this sort of like, performative way towards him. Like, I don't like you and I'm going to fucking shun you is just like so goofy to me. At this point, I just kind of roll with the assumption that, and I've heard, I don't know if you're familiar with Destiny, but I heard Destiny say that he's friends with Lauren Southern, and he was friends with Nick Fuentes at a time. And he doesn't really see any way in which people being agreeable or cool people to hang out with necessarily has to do with like what party they align with.
I think so,
and that
too.
seems pretty common sense to me for the most part.
And that's how life was pre-Trump. If you think about it, like, Trump was really where things got like when popped off, right? And then everyone started identifying with whatever group that they wanted to, and then identity politics really took hold. And now if you deviate slightly, if you have a nuanced idea about anything or a perspective that is different, you are deemed like just an outlier and like supposed to be in this wasteland with other outliers, and then no one takes you seriously. So like, I'm labeled as tradcon, or I'm this like conservative, like 1950s whatever, and I'm not, I'm not this woman who's like Betty Homemaker. I'm just a normal girl.
But what's the counter argument to you, the trad mom thing, which I love a good abbreviation, so that sounds pretty cool. But is the other side basically saying like, you idiot, obviously you should like try to both have a successful, thriving career / side business / and have a family? Is that their idea? Is that you should do all of it, or just like fuck the family? You should be focused on your money.
Well, both is what they tell me, and they're they think that I'm brainwashed, and they think that just people or my husband brainwashed me, and he made me his little slave, and now I don't have a say in the household. I'm just this doormat that everyone can walk on. And it's the furthest thing from the truth, and I'm the happiest because I don't have to deal with all of those things that are on my shoulder anymore. And it's crazy because I see these women and I know immediately that they're miserable and that their life sucks. But they're never going to say it to my face, right? I have been on podcasts with boss babes and huge porn stars. Like, I met Alexis Texas. I had a whole conversation with her. And, I'm just saying, a lot of people cope, and a lot of people say things to make themselves feel good at the end of the day. But you can't, like, I can see through all of that stuff. And I don't understand how other people don't see through it, but they're not lying. They're really bad at lying to themselves.
I just don't understand how anyone could really think that being a go-getting hustler is going to be the thing that brings meaning to your life in the long run. And I say that as somebody who really spent like my whole life up until maybe 2-3 years ago not thinking about the family thing and not thinking about how important it was. And a big part of it was that my fiance grew up in a sort of insular Armenian community where her and her family, they meet up like damn near every weekend. It's like extremely important for them to spend time together. She has to see her great grandmother on a regular basis. If she didn't, it would be looked at upon like she was fucking crazy. Family's super important to them. And I think when I decided to have a kid was at the exact moment that I started to notice that I was getting, I wasn't going out and partying anymore. I wasn't going to the club. I wasn't sleeping around. Me and my girl had been together for like 3-4 years at this point, and we started getting really into exercise and eating healthy.
Yeah.
And we started watching too many shows on Netflix.
Yes.
Like we all of a sudden had just like way too many reality shows that we'd seen. And then I remember we went on one trick or treat, like, you know, Halloween type little thing with my nephews, and we just are seeing them going door to door, and we're seeing all these other kids in the neighborhood. And at one point on the drive home, I was just kind of like, or I forget if maybe she initiated, but we were like, you know, I could do that. Like, I could really see that. Like, that would fit really well into my life at this point, because I see myself kind of like having watched too many seasons of British Bake Off or like 90 Day Fiance at this point. Like, and now when I look at it, it's like, no, I could have been one of these dudes who dedicates their whole life to their, you know, their random fucking hobby or some sport that they're super into. You know, like people do CrossFit now instead of fucking having families, which it's a lot better than you being a fucking meth head or drinking yourself under the table every night. But I do think that like a lot of these things that people have sort of invented to do with their lives are kind of just workarounds towards having a family.
I agree. And it's funny because, you know, just like you mentioned, these people don't really have a long-term view of what they want their life to look like. So they think that because they're in this corporate position and they're killing it and they're making all this money, that is going to be sustainable for 20 years. That's going to be sustainable for 30 plus years. And it's not, because you get older and you're like, this is a bunch of BS and I don't really want to work this long. And I'm kind of tired of my boss, or I want to start my own thing, right? And it's just this weird lie that people tell each other or tell themselves. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to do this for a long time, and I'm not going to focus on kids or a family or anything like that. And I talk to women who are childless, and it's fascinating because they're like, I just want to go travel with my husband, or I want to go, you know, volunteer. And those are all good things, right? But it's like, how much traveling is a lot? Like how much traveling is good enough?
When I was 18, traveling seemed like the most important thing in the world to me. And as I've gotten older, it's like, it's just not that big a deal. Like, it's cool. If I have something to do in Korea, I'm going to Korea, but I'm probably not going to Korea unless there's like a pretty good reason. I don't have that wanderlust thing in my brain anymore. That went away at some point. That went away
for me too, because the thought of coming here, to be honest, was exciting, but I also was like, that's a logistical nightmare with an 11-month.
With a kid, especially.
Yeah. I mean, with an 11-month-old.
As soon as you got a kid, it's a whole different thing.
But I will say it is way more manageable than I thought. And I told my husband, I was like, this is kind of fun, but at the same time, like, I want to rip out my hair. But I could do this like multiple times, and I could probably have more kids doing this too.
Right.
And like, I want my kids to be well-traveled. I want them to, you know, see the world. I saw the world when I was a young kid because my dad was a pilot. So I got to experience the world and travel all the time. So I want the same experience for my kids. It's just not the same for me anymore.
This is the argument that I sometimes hear coming from certain like manosphere voices. Like, I think I've heard Fresh and Fit kind of say this, is that if you're a dude and you basically get into the sort of arrangement that you're describing, that it's just really risky because you've put yourself in a position where that woman is clearly going to be able to take a large percent of your money or whatever for the rest of your life if things don't work out, and that you don't know if she's going to end up being a fucking crazy person. And I would say the same thing to you in a way where it's like you've kind of put like all your chips on this guy working out, which is scary to people because they like the idea that they could kind of move on easily, you know?
Well, I think that's the problem, right? Like, the fact that people have this like automatic way out, and they think, if this doesn't work out, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And I guess you can call me naive. You can call me whatever you want. I really don't care. I choose to trust my husband, and I choose to follow his lead because he's not given me anything different. He hasn't wavered. He hasn't dropped the ball in a significant way, right? And we've been together for 4 years. So there hasn't been really a reason to not trust him or trust his judgment. And if we ever were in that situation, I would say like, hey, I don't think smoking crack would be a really good idea. So let's not do that, right? And that would be like me taking a step and taking the lead right there.
Bring the board together and have a little vote on smoking crack.
Exactly. Like
that's the value of a relationship.
Let's bring, and that's what I call it too. Like my husband's the CEO and I'm like COO. I operate the households, right? He manages, or he's like the leader. He's the face. He's the one that gets put forward, right? But you need someone to manage the day to day. So I'm the COO of our family. I make sure that like people make appointments and, he has his lunch, and make sure that he's equipped to not think about making food or how the house is getting cleaned and all that other stuff, so he can do what actually is important, which is making money for our family and, something that he really likes to do. And he can just focus on that. And I can focus on the things that I actually like to do, which is manage the household, taking care of things. Like I like that, and I have my YouTube thing and I love it too. But if YouTube shuts down my channel, I would just be okay being a housewife and being a mom.
Because I see my girl kind of going through this mentally where she feels like, in her career's OnlyFans, which is, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, it's pretty convenient because she's able to sort of, like, we have a separate house that she can take photos at or film at or whatever. So it doesn't ever have to, like, intersect with our normal life. But I know that it's kind of in her head that she won't feel right about our kid's upbringing if the kid isn't also able to see her being a role model as a person who's doing their thing and being a go-getter, et cetera. She doesn't seem comfortable with the idea of our child just viewing her as just a housewife once she becomes cognizant of those things. Is that something that you're at all concerned about?
No, because I'm not just a housewife.
Right.
And
but what if you were? What if the YouTube thing wasn't, if you just didn't have anything on the side and you were just kind of a mom? Or do you think you wouldn't really be able to be happy that way?
Oh, no. I love that. Like, I love being a mom. I love being just a housewife. And that's the thing, is that you get purpose by, like, I want to teach my daughter. I want to homeschool my kids. And I'm very smart. Like, I have a mechanical engineering degree with robotics. Like, you would think that I would actually want to use that degree. And that is pouring into my children, advancing them in math or in science before they actually can get to a level, like a grade that actually talks about like all of this stuff, right? And so I think that's the difference, is you use the information and the experiences that you've learned and that made you a person, right? And then you pour that into your kids. And that to me is not just being a housewife, right? Is you're teaching them how to stand up for themselves. You're teaching them all of these skills that are learned by going through life, right? The school of hard knocks. And so you teach that to your kids. And I think that's the best thing that we could be as parents and as, husband and wife, is to show our kids how love actually works. Because I think a lot of people are messed up because they saw their moms and dads like just all messed up. And we're human, right? We're human. But I think the thing that people need to be thinking of is, like, if you introduce kids to the mix, your main priority is them, right? And I'm not saying, like, I put my husband first. Like, he's number one in my life. But together as a unit, we care more about River. Like, River is our main priority.
Right.
And then everything else is like, okay, we're good. Like, we're good.
That was one thing I noticed with me and my girl, is like, there was all these little things we used to fight about. And then we had a kid. And now it's like we're just like a team who's working on an important goal.
Yes.
The only thing we're going to really fight about at this point is like one of us not pulling our weight in regards to, taking care of the kid or, but it's just these little minor things. Like we used to fight over like, not necessarily having the same interests or wanting to do different things, or like, oh, maybe we're not spending enough time together because you like doing this and I like doing this and those types of things. And then you have a kid and it's like all that shit is, all these hobbies you pick up are just kind of whatever,
Well, that's the bored phase that you guys were in, because I went through the same thing when I was finishing up my second company. I was shutting everything down because it failed during the pandemic. I was home a lot more, and I wasn't pregnant or anything like that. So I was a stay-at-home wife, right? And I realized I was like, I was kind of crazy then too, because I was telling my husband, like, okay, now you're home. So like, what are we doing? I picked out this show and let's talk about our day. And he's like, I need 20 minutes. Can you just leave me alone?
Yeah, we used to do that a lot because I would come home from before this. We had a store,
Yeah.
so it's like I'm meeting all these people that I'm interviewing or doing content with, and then I'm also meeting like a million fans and like
Yeah.
subscribers, customers, whoever who are coming by the shop. And I would get home from work, and she'd want to have this like intense conversation.
Yes.
And I would like just be sort of zoned out. And then it took her a little while to realize like, oh, he needs a fucking moment when he comes home. Yeah.
Like he needs a shower, food, and just to sit and decompress for a little bit before you have conversations. And I think that that's where people say, oh, you're just a bored housewife. No, but it's an understanding that like in that role, right, there are pros and cons. I get to do whatever I want all day long. I don't have a schedule. I don't have anyone to report to. And it's great. That's the beauty of doing what I like. I get to go to Target. I get to do things that I actually want to do. My mom and my sister just moved closer to me. So now they're going to be around family and the kids are going to grow up together. So I have opportunities to do that. If I was working full time, I would have to put so much money into daycare. That would be all of my income would go to daycare and just taking care of my daughter. And then now these days, like, I'm sorry, but there's some weird things going on in schools and daycare centers. And I don't like that idea, you know? And so, you know, there are pros and cons to anything in life. And there are sacrifices that you have to make as people, right? And so to your question about, you know, these manosphere guys, oh, why would you like want to get married? There's no incentive for men to get married. I think that there's an aspect of legacy that is missing in these conversations. And of course, yes, the laws and everything are against men and I completely acknowledge that, but that's the side of the red pill that I can't necessarily be on. And that's why I'm like adjacent to it because I am very pro-marriage. I'm very much pro-family. And I think that it is important for people to be in marriages and and have families. Now, do I think that the government should be involved in your family or, you know, all of that stuff? No. But that's a decision that you're going to have to make with the person that you're with, right? We have a standard marriage. We got married at, you know, we had like the whole pastor thing and then the signed documents, right? But if that's not your prerogative, you don't have to do that. But like if you have a kid, right, out of wedlock, I know I'm like the trad mom, okay? If you have a kid outside of marriage, right, the man still has to pay child support.
Right.
So who are you actually protecting? You know what I mean? Like there's like the laws are still working against men regardless of the fact that they're married or not married.
But also, if you're a man and you make a baby with a woman and you aren't like eagerly paying some percentage of this kid's living expenses, you're a piece of shit, right? Like, and I do think the laws need to be in place because of the fact that a lot of men just are pieces of shit. But to me, that's like unfathomable to just have a kid with a woman and then just like not want to be involved financially. To me, if one of my friends died, I would take care of their kids on their behalf.
Yeah, I mean, I would do the same.
And that's not my fucking responsibility. But I had a friend recently who was missing for like 4 hours because he's a fucking idiot and he was just sitting on the phone, and his wife called me and was basically like, "Are you on the phone with him?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Oh, well, like honestly, I'm so worried about where he might be that they were about to organize a search party."
Wow.
And then he just shows up, and meanwhile I'm like just walking around my house thinking about it, and I'm like,
I need a will.
I have to pay for this motherfucker's kids. Like I can't let his kids starve or be fucked up, like, you know. And that was just like a weird moment for me to realize I felt that sense of responsibility to him.
Yeah, no, I agree. And here's the thing. I think that the laws do have to change. I think the child support debit card is a really good thing that some states are doing, where you put all of the money for child support on a card that is used for your child, right? And all the transactions are tracked and sent to the man or whoever's paying the child support. It's usually the man. And so that they can see itemized what the mom is spending on. Like if it's hair and nails, we have a problem. If it's massage, it's a problem, right? That's not what you're supposed to be using.
These hoes are going to buy all these diapers on the debit card and then sell them on eBay.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that happening.
No, but for sure that totally makes sense. But it would create some amount of accountability, so you can kind of assume that like women's groups would fight against it tooth and nail, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they will fight till the death for that one, because they don't think that the argument that I hear is that, okay, well, as the woman who is the main primary caretaker, she had to pay all of this stuff up front, right? Like the first, so rent, light bill, cable, all that stuff. Right. So when child support finally comes in, like closer to the end of the month, then she has to retroactively pay those things, right? So she uses the money for other things that she needs instead of the lights and like things for the actual child, you know? And so that's the argument that I hear. But I think the child support debit card or a credit card would be much better option for child support in general. And I think that women should be held accountable. So if they are using the card for other things, then they should be taken to court for that and ordered to like subpoena all of the child support documents or like the charges, so that he can be like, okay, now I'm reducing the child support, or like figuring out custody, because that's the other thing too. Women win more custody battles than men. And I see these things all the time, and it is a problem. The system needs to change. I think the thing that needs to change most is getting accountability on the woman's side, because there are feminist lawyers. They tell people in like articles, hey, hire this lawyer, hire this feminist lawyer. She's going to make sure you say this, this, and this in court, and that he's emotionally abusive, and that he's
I've seen so many of the successful dudes that I know get accused of being either physically or emotionally abusive immediately at the time of their divorce, that it's just pretty transparent to me that this is not something that is necessarily happening or real, that this is just part of the playbook. So, but now it's to the point where when I hear about somebody getting divorced and they're being accused of abuse, I'm like, no, that's bullshit. They're getting divorced. That's just part of getting divorced, is that they get accused of this. Yeah.
And that should be, and the woman should have accountability for that. The thing is, like, that's so messed up, because that man's life is not only ruined because, oh, now he's divorced and has to pay all this money in child support or like spousal support or alimony or anything like that, but now you're being accused of abuse.
And if you're in certain lines of work, that could be the end of your career, realistically. If you're in Hollywood, it's pretty much a sure thing.
Well, and then and then that's when I say, like, women are stupid in that sense, because they're not thinking long term, like with anything. Because if your ex-husband loses his job because you claim that he was abusive, where's your money now, baby? You know what I mean? Like, you just shot yourself in the foot, you idiot. Like, and that's the thing, is like, women do things out of emotion, and they act in a like huge emotional state, and then after they come down, they're like, damn it, why did I do that? Like, why did I say those things, or why did I slash his tires, or whatever? You
saying that makes me feel like I have a pretty good detection capability, because I've had a lot of crazy girls around me in my life, but they usually don't last very long, because as soon as I start to see that kind of behavior, it's like, oh, okay, but you are a liability. But I need, like, men should tap into that detection thing that goes off in your head too, because I see men, like, or I hear these cases, or I react to them on YouTube, right? And I'm like, you didn't know she was crazy before you got with her, or before you stuck it in? Like, I tell men, don't stick it in crazy. If you don't want to end up in these situations, don't stick it in crazy. And then the argument is like, well, I didn't know she was crazy. You didn't know how she was talking to other people, or she was like treating servers, or
your own family or her family. You didn't pick up on any of those subtle.
If you're a man and you are, without sex for a significant period of time, your brain will start to avoid and ignore almost everything.
Red flags.
Oh, I've been there. Yeah, you'll ignore anything.
You're like, I just need to get it in.
It's like a sickness at that point. Your brain, like I've seen it in my life where I forget, there was like some road trip I was on where I was not around any women. And then I get home and it's like, just somehow I was having like really bad luck with like none of the chicks that I was seeing. This is back when I was in my sort of like drug using, womanizing period of my life. And yeah, after like 4 weeks of not getting any pussy, my brain started to like do some weird things. Like I started to like really like be itching for it. It made me like really worried about like what is happening to me.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And that's the thing, like men are having less sex now than women, and the tides have changed with that. And that, I think that's what's disturbing, is like the sexual liberation movement hurts women more than it does men. But it also starves the men that used to be your local hookup or your local guy that you got with. Now these women are international. They're getting flown out. These women that are, average looking, they probably juice themselves up with like Botox and filler and stuff like that. They probably look a little bit more attractive. They buy, they do their makeup and stuff like that, but they're not looking for the guy in their hometown. They're not looking for these men that used to just be the ones that you were with, right? Now these women are getting flown out. They're with like rappers and Instagram people and that world that I don't really know anything of.
Right.
But it's like the dynamics have changed so much, and now men are not having sex with women at the same rate. And that's when like alarm bells start going off as a society, I think, right? When these men, like you said, are starved of sex, they start doing crazy things. And you have like the incels, you have femcells now that like are the literal opposite of incels. And now there's like this new thing. I don't know if you've talked about it with the trans panel, but there's this thing called transmaxing. Have you heard of this?
What is that?
Transmaxing are incels that turn themselves into women that like have a transition male to female, but they are attracted to women. So they think that they're going to have more sex by transitioning because they're like they're not having it as a man, and they think that they're going to have better luck as a woman.
It actually seems like a pretty good strategy. Like it sounds like it would work.
Oh my gosh,
no. It's not working. I feel like it would work.
I mean, think about all of the hormones that you have to take.
Yeah. Wanting to subject yourself to that is pretty crazy, but I just feel like the trans community, they're not going to reject you. I mean, they might once you use somebody's pronoun wrong or something, but if you're like making an attempt at entering into their world, I feel like that's a pretty accepting world, right?
Yes, but that's the thing, is like the person that's transmaxing actually doesn't believe anything that they're doing. They're just wanting to have sex.
Right.
They're wanting to have a better life, and they think that if they get operations or if they are on like all of these hormones and taking estrogen and stuff like that, that they're going to have a better life. And I think it's just not good.
It's
either.
deranged, because in order to do that, you have to also accept that you basically don't care about your own physical appearance to such an extreme that you're willing to completely take on a different identity. Like your identity matters so little to you that you'll gladly just throw it away and make these life-changing changes to your body just so that you could get some ass. I mean, that really says a lot about the state of affairs. And I would wonder if this is like something that like 50 people are doing, or if it's like an actual significant thing.
Well, they wrote a manifesto, and I read the manifesto. It was interesting. They're like, oh, you can get better rates on your car insurance if you're a woman. I was like, that's probably the most practical aspect about changing your sex, I guess, or changing the way that you.
Well, on the trans panel, they seemed like legitimately concerned about the thing of like biological men entering women's prisons. That they consider that like and this is coming from trans people. They all seem to think that was like a very serious concern.
I mean, it is a concern when anyone, like, now the criteria of becoming trans is just saying, I identify as trans. Like, I'm a trans man.
Yeah, and what they were like, one of Blaire, I think, was saying that if she goes to a women's locker room, that she will use the women's locker room, but that she would not be nude in front of the other people in the locker room. And a few of the other trans people took offense to this. And Blaire was like, I think you need to have a sense of respect. Like, I'm not a biological female. If I am presenting male genitalia in front of these people, it's just not appropriate. Like, I need to play by a different set of rules and use the bathroom stall to change my clothes or whatever. It's not that much to ask.
That's what I say too. I completely agree. And by the way, Blaire is a beautiful trans woman, okay?
But the solution of Blaire going into the men's bathroom, I mean, me and every other guy in there, our jaws would fucking hit the floor if she walked in there. That would be also really not a great solution.
But she's very passable.
Right.
That's the thing, is that you just have these men. Like, if you just walked in a woman's bathroom and said, I'm a trans woman. That's the problem. And people are abusing that aspect, right? Like,
that's like the Wee Spa situation where it was like a big fat guy with a beard who had a penis and he was in the women's locker room or
little
something.
Girls there too, which I thought was weird too. For
which luckily everybody on the trans panel seemed to be pretty equally horrified by that.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like anything now with the schools, they're if a boy identifies as a girl, he can just walk into the bathroom and not. You don't have to change your appearance. You don't actually have to transition to be trans now, or non-binary, and all of these different terms that they're using and all of these flags that they're flying, right? That's a problem. If we don't have anything to ground your movement on, when do we stop moving the goalpost? You know what I mean?
And if trans people want to be taken seriously in general, they're just going to have to cede certain issues. Like the sports thing, I think, is a pretty clear cut one that it's like, this is not a sustainable thing that could keep happening. Like swimming has already gone down. We're going to have to really like pull back at a certain point. And Blaire, I think, is a good example. This whole idea that everybody on the right has this massive animus towards trans people. I feel like Blaire is a pretty clear example of that not being true.
Exactly.
She's just willing to engage in reasonable conversation in a way that I think a lot of people that the right encounters online, they're just not really seeing that from them.
Well, absolutely. I do think that too. I think that people need to come to the table and have these discussions and be willing to have like hot debates, but walk away and be like, you know what, you're still a cool person and it doesn't change the way that I feel about you. We just have different views, and that's how the world operated before all of this stuff happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the saying was like, keep your politics, your religion and everything at home, right? And just come and have fun and like just be a person.
I remember I was having a conversation with my mom a few years ago where I sort of realized that my mom's expectation of what she would be capable of doing in her life when she was a young girl or when she was in college, it was very small in comparison to probably like what my dad thought was possible for him. And I now hear her talk about her life with this touch of regret that she didn't have bigger ambitions, or that she didn't try to be a journalist or an author or like all these other kind of things that she now, looking back at her life, she's kind of like, fuck, like I should have believed in myself more. And it really hit me because I was like, this is a good example of how women have been like, systematically discouraged from, pursuing certain walks of life or whatever. And, that's the question, is like, will my daughter suffer from 5% of what she went through? Will it be, I'm sure a lot of these feminist groups would say that what my daughter will go through will be almost exactly as bad as what my mom went through 60 years ago, which I don't really buy. I think, probably some of that still lingers in society, but not a ton.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, I went to engineering school, right? I believe that I was I basically got in because I was a girl. Because it was one girl to every 8 guys at my university. And we were a very small university, but it was still a very big like gap between men and women, right? And so what I want to say is that there's so many STEM programs, there's so many programs that are pushing girls to get involved. women just don't want to go into those fields. Like, there's just not that desire that men have to be in engineering or be an architect or something like that, right? That is about things. You don't see a lot of women electricians. You don't see a lot of people doing women doing these like things that men typically do, right? And yes, while I agree, like, I think that we should inspire women to do better things. I think that what's missing is saying, you know what, that's amazing. You should do that. But don't forget that you also have to, take care of your fertility. And let's learn what fertility looks like and, what your egg count is or whatever. Like, women shouldn't be saying to other women, you know what? You can do whatever you want to do. There's no consequences to your actions. You can be, like, you can go be a porn star and make all the money that you want to make, right? Like, whatever. But there's no consequences. Like, that's what people don't, like, that's the connection point, right? They're saying, oh, like, you can do this thing. However, if you do this for a very long time, or if you become very popular like Lana Rhoades or Mia Khalifa, right, then you don't have to like deal with the consequences of that. You can't be integrated into society the same way if you're just a normal person.
If I were to ever be, ushering a girl into the porn world, which I really haven't done much of, but if like it was a girl who was like kind of new to it, this is the advice I would give her. I would say, you're going to see Facebook threads and Twitter threads of people absolutely trashing you. You're going to see some Facebook thread of like 50 or 100 people you went to high school with absolutely dragging you, shitting on you. Your parents are going to, maybe you get lucky and maybe they're pretty cool about it. I definitely know a bunch of girls who got into porn and were like basically immediately exiled from their family. If you decide that you want to get out of this and you want to get a different job, that's probably not going to happen for like, a large percentage of careers. There's the way that I would like the world to work where, sex workers would be given this gigantic amount of forgiveness and, not be judged for that. And then there's reality, which is that this is like probably one of the most stigmatizing things you could do with yourself. My girl got a degree of, that would help her, help with like children's therapy or whatever, working with kids in general. It's not happening realistically. If she decided she wanted to get into that, maybe she could start up some kind of independent practice, but you're not going to get fucking hired by the best in the business because you have this on your record. We already didn't get called back about I shouldn't even say, but something with our kid that we were trying to enroll her in. And, suspiciously, it seems like that's why they weren't hitting us back, which we just have to kind of own. Many of the porn girls I know, at some point, their family members will receive either in email or in the physical mail, they will receive some sort of like folder of images of their daughter.
100%.
And I don't think it's right, but it's like, these are the things you have to be ready for.
This is reality. And this is what we have. Like, that's the dose is what you're saying women need to hear. Because I think that we live in la la land. Like, I think that there's an expectation that, I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to put myself out there like that. Even OnlyFans, right? There's girls that are aspiring, 17-year-old girls that are aspiring to be OnlyFans models, and they're like setting up that like the date that they turn 18.
I talked to a porn star who has now been doing it for a few years, but told me that when she was in high school and she was 17, she was in fact counting down to the OnlyFans dropping, promoting her own nude content before she was illegal to be nude on the internet, which was one of the most mind-blowing things I ever heard.
Well, that's the extreme, right? Your grandma or your mom saying that I want to aspire, I wish that I had the opportunity to be a journalist or something like that. Like, that's, I think, the idealism that feminism was trying, like, they're like, this is like the light stuff, right? But in all reality, we saw the pendulum swing so far the other way. And it's like, yeah, like now girls are aspiring to be OnlyFans and porn stars, and like, you do you, and that is your prerogative, right? But you got to deal with the consequences that come with it. And you making that decision at 18 years old, you don't know what the ramifications of that will be when you turn 30. And when people are looking at you differently and saying like, no, I don't want to marry you. And Like, that's the harsh reality. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but some people just need to hear that. Like, you are choosing money over other things.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've had plenty of conversations with chicks who are, maybe 35 and they've had a lot of surgery. They look real good. They have been doing porn for 10 years and they've got plenty of money and they're probably going to be able to take care of themselves forever. But they're kind of just dealing with the fact that the types of guys that they want to date, that they would like to settle down with, realistically are just probably not going to wipe them up because of the fact that they've done porn for 10 years. And, you have to respect those dudes having that prerogative. And even though you kind of feel bad for these chicks because they've sort of got everything that they want in life except a healthy dating life.
Yes, but like I said, everything in life has pros and cons. Choose your hard, right? Choose the hard that you are willing to live with, right? For me, I was a feminist and I changed my ways, but I wasn't selling myself on OnlyFans or doing porn, right? So there isn't this idea or this image of me on the internet for people to be like, that's Rebecca. Like, what she's saying today is not the same Rebecca that is in that photo, right?
Yeah.
And so or in that video. But so that's the issue. And I think that we need to have these realistic conversations because, like, look, if you want to do that and if you have always been starved of money or that's something that you want to pursue, amazing. Go do that. Like, be the best at that. But don't expect Prince Charming at the end of the rainbow with your pot of gold and the kids to come with it. That's the delusion. But that's the delusion for all women at this point, or most women, because it's like, okay, you want to focus and be heads down in your career like a man and work all of your 20s doing this thing, right? Now you're at 30 and now you have to deal with the consequences. Did you date? Were you pursuing marriage, or was that something that you were even thinking about? Did you want kids? No? Okay. Well, now we have to deal with that, right? Because that's regret too. So in life, there are going to be these hard decisions that we have to make, and we have to live with the decisions that we make.
See, okay, this is the thing that I see playing out sometimes is that sometimes I could tell you the most well-known porn stars on earth, and they have husbands who basically are just kind of cool with it. They're like these sort of, I don't even want to say beta male types, but they're guys who are comfortable being in the back seat in that regard, and they don't have like the average guy's ego about wanting their girl just to themselves or whatever. But the thing about some of these women I've had conversations with who are sort of getting towards the end of their reproductive period is that the guys that they consider acceptable for them to date or get married to or have kids with are the exact type of dudes who are not going to be down for this kind of thing. They like rappers, they like actors, they like ball players, etc. These are the kind of guys who are like massively concerned with how they're viewed publicly. A lot of the porn husbands that I know are really kind of like guys that are sort of comfortable being in the shadows. They're kind of comfortable playing almost like the assistant role and like helping this woman out who's like on top of the world doing all this different stuff. But then sometimes women want to date the exact type of dude who's not going to be down. Which is just sort of diluted. No,
but that's exactly what's happening. But you're seeing that also with career women, right? You have this career woman that's making a crap ton of money. She makes $200,000, $300,000 a year, right? She's at the top of her game. She's winning at everything that her life, right? And then reality sets in and you're like, I do not have a husband. And the men that I want, the CEOs, the doctors, the people that make the same amount of money that I make, or a higher echelon, they don't want me. They want their assistant. They want the girl that works at the bar down the street. That's hypergamy because women will date up. They will date across and up, right? So they want the better lifestyle. So they'll always shoot up. Well, if you're capped out at $300,000 or you're making a crap ton of money on OnlyFans, right? The guy that you're trying to reach is making a significant amount of money more than you, which is less than 1%. And you're trying to get that guy who is now has a pool of all of these women that he can just have like cherry pick, right? The kind of like the Andrew Tate thing, right? He can choose whoever he wants to be with. But women at that point don't have the option because they're not going to date down. They're dating down. They're choosing that husband that just sits in the background. He's like, I'm just here for the ride, right? But they're not attracted to that man. That's not stimulating for them, right? They want this like alpha bro, like macho man. That's who they want, who makes a crap ton of money. So that's the problem that we're seeing. Men date down. Men, I'm not talking about like in looks. I'm talking about in like money or status, right? They don't care who they're with. They can elevate that woman to their status.
Right. Easily, yeah. Which is it's a dangerous thing to do.
Yes, because
Bandman Kevo is like a rapper / entrepreneur, and he recently went viral because apparently before he wifed up this girl, he also signed her to a contract entitling him to some percentage of her future earnings if she became successful, which only because it's a romantic relationship, it strikes us as very out of the ordinary, because if it were a rapper signing another rapper, that kind of arrangement would be considered completely standard, right?
100%. Yeah. But that's what's just happening. But it's making everything just like this contractual thing. It just takes away from that aspect of, there is a reason why you're with your fiance, right? It's not because she's just good at being a mom or all these other things, or she was like the successful OnlyFans. Like, that's not what really attracted to you. Like, maybe that was a part of it, but it's her personality. It's who she is, right? Like, you're staying with her and you're choosing to have more children with her because she betters your life and you better her life. Right. Right. And I think that these days, like when you look at the red pill and you look at the manosphere stuff, a lot of it too is logical, right? These men are looking at things in a more logical sense. And that's why, like, as a woman being like adjacent to it, like on the side, I can look at these things like, okay, as a woman, like, let's apply some emotion, right? You guys are thinking in a very logical way, sign this document. You're not going to be married. You're not going to do all these things. But, right, a woman is going to say like, no, I want to have that dance in the kitchen. I want to be romantic with my partner. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's missing in these conversations, because it can be very nihilistic. When you look at some of these content creators, I'm like, how? Like, I don't know how you're happy in general, right? Like, you perceive women as this one thing, like they're just bad. And that's not the case. I talk to many women that are good and bad. There's a lot of men that are good and bad. It's people. And
I feel like one of the really common things you hear in the manosphere is basically the whole concept of becoming a high value male, essentially so that if you are in a relationship, you can then also be allowed to cheat, and that the woman should just accept that, which is like, I can say, I remember being 18 or 19 and like that was the fantasy. It was like to be in a relationship with a girl who would hold you down, be there for you, but then also you'd be able to kind of be allowed to do whatever you want. So I understand why that's such a palatable idea to young dudes. I'm going to assume that you don't have much faith in that style of arrangement.
No, I don't. Yeah. And here's the thing. It's like, yes, high value men can cheat, but I think that if you have to have a level of discipline, especially if you're accomplishing all the things that you're trying to accomplish, right? If you've accomplished a certain place in society and with wealth and all of that stuff, and you've reached this high value status, you have some level of work ethic, of discipline, of, having foresight and having being future minded, right? Like, why would you tap into something that is so carnal? I guess there's slip ups and things like that, right? But to be intentional about cheating and having the option, I think is also a little bit of delusion, right?
Yeah, like the idea that I would want to, work 40 hours a week and that I would only have so many nights or so much time that I could spend with my girl, and not even to mention the fact that we have a fucking kid that we're raising together, but that then it would be acceptable for me on a Friday night to like stay out till 3 a.m. hanging out with some random 20-year-old that I met in the club. Like the idea that my girl would just go along with that it's kind of hard for me to understand how anyone could think that that's a likely scenario for most girls to go along with. Like maybe like if I was a woman in a relationship with a high value man, I think I would probably be more accepting of him just like visiting prostitutes, because at least that's like more time efficient.
Yeah.
That they could just sort of like have this transactional relationship. But I mean, like, why the fuck is my girl gonna be watching Netflix alone on a Friday night when I'm out running around with some scallywags? I don't really think that's happening.
No, but I think that's the dream, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what is being sold to these guys, and like, I have issues with that, and that's why I don't completely side with the manosphere. I don't completely side with like red pill, because I do believe that there is value in getting married and being monogamous and being with one person and having kids with that person, right? I think that there's value. And also, like, not even talking about, just what happens to your body when you have sex with other people that is not the person that you're supposed to be connected with, right? Like, when you have sex, you release oxytocin, and that is what makes you pleasure. Like, that's like the pleasure hormone. That's the, all that stuff. So the more you have sex with other people, the level of oxytocin drops. So not only like are you like pair bonding with all of these people, right? You're not doing it effectively and you're not doing it efficiently because your oxytocin levels have reduced over time. Imagine having like hundreds of bodies, right?
Oh, yeah, I don't have to imagine.
Okay.
It's you reach the point of diminishing returns like very quickly, where it just starts to become like, so I'm on this roller coaster ride emotionally where I'm talking to all these different girls and everything, but it means nothing at a certain point.
Yes.
Like the idea, when I see manosphere content of people like just talking about fucking hundreds of women, like it would just be so sick. It's the most unattainable, badass thing. These fucking pickup artist dudes who like cite their lay count and shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, like as someone who's actually done it, this is the most cringe-inducing thing I could imagine.
Yes, and that's...
Although I think it's important to have a period of that in your life when you're young.
Yes, okay. But for men,
Yeah.
I don't think that's very good for women. I'm just going to be that person to be... I think as a man, it's different. We are different. We're like different.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Because, okay, here's the primary thing that's different about me and you is that if I fucked 100 girls over the next 6 months, I could probably have a pretty good time doing so. If you sleep with your husband 100 times, by far that is going to be the thing that increases your pleasure. Like women sleeping around like these. When I think about all the bad dick I gave to girls when I was 19 or whatever, it's like there is no value in sleeping around as a woman. There's value in finding a guy and repeatedly sleeping with him.
Yes.
And that's, as a woman, like every guy nuts the first time they have sex. Almost no women orgasm when they have sex for the first time with a guy. I think the average is like 5-10 times before they start to get that comfortable, right?
Yeah, because that's the thing too. Like the sexual liberation revolution movement is so bad for women,
Right?
Because you're like thinking, oh, I'm gonna just orgasm with the random guy that I met at the bar
In a closet,
who's really drunk. Like we're both really drunk. That's really gonna be amazing, whatever. And you wake up the next day, you're like, I hate my life. Like why did I do that? And that's the thing is like, you're absolutely right. Like marital sex, and I know that people are gonna be like, oh, this is cringe, is the best thing ever. And I tell women, just have sex with your husband. It doesn't matter if you're not in the mood, because once you get started, you're like, I'm like sleeping like a baby after that. He's sleeping like a baby. I'm sleeping like a baby. We're both good. I'm like stress relief. He's like, he's so happy. He just like nutted and went to sleep. You know what I mean?
Sleeping with the same girl for 6 years has made me think about sex in a totally different way. Now when we do it, it's more like, let's spend time together. Let's let's cuddle. Let's just feel each other. Let's just be very present in the moment. Maybe we'll put music on. Maybe this is going to take 45 minutes or an hour, you know, not like intercourse for an hour, but you know, that like kind of thing. Whereas when I think about so many attractive women that I slept with when I was younger, and it was like 5 minutes in a sleeping bag on my friend's floor or whatever. And it's like, wow, you really didn't appreciate whatever she had to offer there. You probably could have like enjoyed yourself a lot more if you just slowed down and like really spent time with her, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing is like women, like if you're giving yourself to so many guys, right? And it's just like a one-off thing, like they're telling women that's empowering. Like that's the empowering part, right? When I think what it is empowering is saying, hey, like, yes, you could sleep around with all of these guys. I don't recommend it to you because here are some of the things that could happen, right? And I always say wise women learn from other people's mistakes. Like that's the thing is like you can be a smart person and learn from making your own mistakes, but learn from another person's mistakes. Don't make the same mistakes that I've made. Don't travel down the same road that I traveled because I've seen all of these other people travel down the same road. And guess what? We've all ended up in places of regret or places of like wanting to tell other people to come back, or they become so miserable and like a hard person to deal with that they're just like that grumpy Karen that just screams at everyone, you know, and all like that's just not good either. That those outcomes are not good. So don't like listen to some of us that like have been there and done that. Like I tell them, I've been the hardcore feminist. You really don't want to go down this route. I'm telling you, like life is so much better with just like doing anything else except trying to like
obsessing over your victimhood status. Exactly. You know, when I think about my daughter and how I want to raise her, like the most tragic outcome I could kind of imagine would be to convince her that the world is strategizing against her and that her experience is going to be that of a victim. Like in reality, that's just not true at all. You're going to have every opportunity that you know, a kid is afforded. Like realistically in America, you're going to be in the top 1% of you know, situations. And in reality, like I hate when people talk about like, oh, you know, you go to college and there's this rape culture or whatever. It's like, where could there possibly be a better environment for a socially minded, progressive minded person or whatever than a college in 2023?
I know.
Like, be fucking serious. This is the most open-minded environment. Or it's actually closed-minded in how open-minded it is.
Yes.
But if you are a trans person, I mean, you're going to be afforded every benefit if you go to a college.
100%. That's why I can't get on with this whole like woke stuff, you know, and like feminism, because it's literally, how is that an empowering movement? Like when they say, oh, we're empowering women to what? To feel more victimized, to say that they're like garbage on the street and that's how the world treats them. How is that empowering? Like what's empowering to me is giving me my options and saying like, look, this is reality, and if you choose this path, this is what you're going to end up with. Or, you know, this is your fertility, right? Do what you want with it, understand that, and like make decisions based off of that, right? But we don't want to apply logic. We just want to live in La La Land because all the stories are like, oh yeah, my one girlfriend from like, you know, whatever, she got married after she was in the workforce for like 20 years and like she totally has an amazing husband and kids. And so you're going off of the outlier, you're going off of the person that is the what's it called? Like not the norm, but like the person on the outside. And
the unicorn,
right? And let's be real, like I've never met a unicorn. I'm sorry. Like okay, maybe one, right?
Well, it's like when people try to say like, oh, look at this girl or how much she made on OnlyFans or look how much this rapper made. That's proof that every kid from the hood can make it up out the hood by making music. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's like 2 or 3 popular rappers a year, maybe like 10 or 15 if you want to like really zoom out and include people who aren't that popular. It's like, this is not a solution to like poverty in the hood or whatever. Yeah. And pointing out that some girl makes $1 million a month on OnlyFans is not great advice for every every other girl on earth who was not born that beautiful. Come on.
Yeah, but then like what social media has also done is that it taps into that, right? Like you don't care about the kid on the street that's like rapping on the corner or whatever. You care about like the guy that's making millions or whatever, has a bunch of streams. Same thing with the OnlyFans, right? Like we're not talking about the girls that didn't make it or that regret it after being like 5 weeks on the platform and like now that stuff is out there, right? Like we want to highlight these people that make a crap ton of money. Why? Because those get clicks and views. And then that's what like we want. We're starving for attention. And like even like this whole thing, right? Like YouTube, we get it for the clips. We get it for the like the thumbnail and all of that stuff because that's what people want to see. They want to see the bad stuff.
Yeah, and it's weird because sometimes what people use me as like, oh, look at what you've done with yourself. You're such an example of how somebody could just start a YouTube channel and just, you know, change their circumstances. I'm like, yeah, but think about the fact that it took 4 million people clicking subscribe in order for my channel to be considered successful, or like 1 million people or whatever. It's like I've watched a ton of people try to get into the same exact line of work that I've been into the past 6-7 years. And have I seen people be successful? For sure, but it's like 1%. It's like the vast majority fail, and I refuse to like even allow people to trot that idea out. It's like the reality is that I was clearly some kind of exception to the rule, and I can't just sit here with a straight look on my face and tell everybody in a crowd, sell a seminar and look out at 500 people and tell them you can do exactly what I could do. I can't tell you that.
Yeah,
if you're in the seminar, you probably are beyond repair. Let's be real.
No, I definitely hear you because people are like, well, you're an outlier too. Like you met your husband at 28, you had kids at 32, like, you know what I mean? Or 31. But like, I'm an outlier in that sense. Like my husband is an amazing man and he is definitely like an alpha type of guy. And I was definitely not in a place to meet like that type of man. He's not like, I'm not saying he's like wealthy, or I'm not saying that he's all that, but I'm saying he's the man for me, you know what I mean? And he's exactly what I needed. That's an outlier situation because of my past, right? Because I was this boss babe entrepreneur, like hustling all the time. Like my work was everything, was my baby. I used to say, my work is my baby. I don't need kids. You know, I don't want kids. And now, like, I can't even think about my life without my daughter.
It's funny because my girl was in a lesbian college relationship for 4 years.
Oh, my gosh.
Before me.
Wait, how did that...
She said that ultimately she, like, just realized that...
She likes dudes?
Yeah, that she really, like, felt the need to be in a relationship with a guy, and that she was just really, really good friends with the woman, and that ultimately... it just wasn't fulfilling her in the same way that she like might have thought that it would at the beginning of the relationship.
I think that's a lot of like gay relationships are like that.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, were you just too agreeable? Like, did you just kind of go along with this, like knowing that maybe it wasn't for you? Were you just sort of along for the ride? I wonder.
With the feminism stuff?
Well, with the relationship with the woman, just because when she ultimately got out of it, because she realized that she was more straight than she was
but
gay.
that's what I'm saying. Like, you're agreeable. Like, women are more agreeable. So, like, if you think about it, like, that makes so much sense. You're like, oh, I get along with her, of course. Like, you know, we have fun together. I think that's a lot of gay relationships are like that. Like they're just having fun. I have gay friends that are married and they have like orgies and all of this other stuff. Like you just hear of like, yeah, we just like each other and we live in the same house, but we kind of just do our own thing. I have friends that are very much in those relationships.
That's wild. Just that like gay people are even capable of pulling that off. But
oh yeah,
I'm not that surprised because I mean I went to one gay bar in my life and I just saw the amount of like carnal energy being exchanged by all these dudes. And I just immediately realized this is absolutely nothing like the mating ceremonies that I've been a part of in bars and clubs and stuff. Because when you're in a bar, there's this thing where like the girls are kind of acting like they're not interested, and the guys have their Versace shirts on and they're trying to look as cool as possible. And the girls are, the guys are trying to talk to the girls, and the girls are sort of playing hard to get. And then I go to one gay bar for like 20 minutes in my whole life with a girl after a date, and I'm just like, so this is what it looks like when everybody wants to fuck each other.
Yeah, they're like just having sex everywhere, like in bathrooms.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see it, but I would assume it would be almost impossible to keep them from doing that.
No, yeah. I've been out with a lot of my gay friends, and like go to WeHo. Like literally, it's just debauchery.
Yeah, I'm just like not at that state in my life.
No, I'm like, I don't, and that's the thing is like, and with my transformation of like being like this feminist, whatever, I stopped drinking. I don't drink anymore. I've been clean for 3 years, coming on 4. So like, I don't drink, like I don't do drugs. I don't do anything like that anymore. And like, just the clarity that you get from not being messed up all the time, And I think that also helped me too, because, when like I went to therapy for a little bit of time there too, and they said like you're very empathetic, like you're a highly sensitive person and you feel like a lot of people's emotions. And I thought that was like a bunch of BS when I heard it the first time, and then I read a whole book on it. I was like, that is my entire existence right there. And when I found that out and found out that like highly sensitive people, when they use drugs and alcohol, like you're completely like dumbing yourself down, like you're dampening that ability to like read the room and stuff like that. And I was doing that. I was like, I was just existing. Like I was just like trying to function at a baseline of like, okay, I just exist here, right? And now I feel like I can have conversations with people and we can get to deeper levels way faster without like other things. They're like, you don't want to drink, you don't want to do anything. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I'm having a great time. Like,
yeah, I remember I lived in Long Beach for a couple of years where I was
me too.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I was out on the singles scene hard, going to the Pike and all those bars on 4th Street. You too, really?
No,
no.
No, but I'm saying like I lived in Long Beach and in Seal Beach.
Oh, okay, yeah. Here. And I just remember that there was a couple of different girls throughout my couple of years going to the bar there where, I would meet cute girls all the time. And, I was starting to get into like my 30s or like early 30s at that point. And I started to really feel like maybe I could like actually be in a relationship. And I remember like, some of the girls that I would see at the bar that we would hook up or whatever, I would be like, hey, like, what are you doing tomorrow? Like we should just hang out at my house or watch a movie or whatever. And then like they would come over and we'd watch a movie for like a half hour and they'd be like, we should order alcohol. Like, like they really, a lot of these people that you meet going to the bar and shit are just so incapable of socializing or having any kind of real serious conversation unless they're drunk. It's just like a huge part of them.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And it's like, when I stopped drinking, people are like, are you okay? Like, is everything okay with your life? Like, are you going through something? And I've never been asked more about my state of mind than telling people like I don't drink anymore. Because like I was a fun drunk, okay? Like I would be at the bars and we like, I'd be the life of the party because like I'm like a naturally bubbly person, right? So I would get really drunk and I would be the fun drunk, right? Until I got to that point. It's like the tipping point. And they would call me Blackout Bex. That was like Bob. That was like, oh, is Bob coming out tonight? And I was like, sure. Like,
do you want to buy me a shot? Maybe,
I know, right? And I've said that so many times, and people are like, "You used to be like that?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was, but I was also just like coping with my life. Like I just was a miserable person. So like drinking and happy hours were my like escape to the life that I was living. It was bizarre. It was, it was definitely a haze of my life where I don't really remember a lot of things in the sense of like, I just was partying. I was like going out every day after work. And it wasn't even partying. Like I was going to happy hour and just would stay.
Yeah.
Like I became that person. It was just
That period in your life where just like being out in public and just being outside just seems great because anything that could potentially happen to you would be exciting and interesting. And now I'm in the state of mind. I was interviewing a rapper maybe like a year or two ago, and he was talking about getting shot. And he was describing just standing outside of the liquor store for like a long period of time before getting shot. And I'm just thinking about it in my head. I'm like, that is the dumbest fucking thing I could possibly imagine anyone doing. But how much of my life did I spend hanging out outside the fucking bodega drinking or smoking weed or whatever? Like a lot. And it only in the last couple of years seems like an absurd thing to do with my time. And I really probably wouldn't even feel that way if it wasn't for the fact that I'm high profile enough that I like feel as if I need that, you know, that I can't subject myself to that kind of thing, you know?
No, and especially like that's another thing about like high profile, high status people. I'm like, you have so much more to lose. Like I'm just a regular old person. Like I do YouTube. I have fun on I make content, right? Like I'm not Pearl. Like you were just interviewing Pearl, right? Pearl,
she's new to the status
too. But I'm friends with Pearl. I met Pearl when she had 20,000 subscribers. I had more subscribers than her, and she blew up. Like we met each other at a coffee shop. The
Matrix is going to come for Pearl, right?
I think so.
If they came for Andrew Tate, she's got to be next.
I think so.
What do they got for her? There's got to be a BuzzFeed article in the works.
No, I think Pearl. To be honest, I think like Pearl's my like homie.
Yeah, no, she's great.
But Pearl is like that. I don't want to say she's naive. She's just exists. Like she's just like there and she has a good time. The thing is like no one can offend Pearl. Pearl is unoffendable, I think. Like she just has fun. I think she's having fun doing this whole thing. And I don't think that she expected, and I'm not trying to put words in her mouth, but I don't think she expected to get to 1 million subscribers in like less than a year, you know what I mean? But I think she's just having fun with it.
It was very revealing though when I seen somebody ask her how she got to that level so quickly, and she said YouTube Shorts, and then she was showing her analytics, and she has 100 million views on her channel this month, which between our two channels, I think we might be at like 45 or 50. So
she's really smart.
She figured out the fucking YouTube Shorts thing, which realistically, like that is the thing that YouTube is allowing you to use to basically grow like crazy. It's very hard to go viral off a YouTube video these days, but the Shorts, there's a shitload that you could benefit from that. So she's very smart that she tapped in on that.
No, she's incredibly smart. And when you sit down, I was just sitting down with her, and her brain, like the way that she talks, she's so fast. I'm like, chill out. Like, and I was pregnant too. I was like, please just slow down. Like I trying to pick up what you're saying, you know? I think she's blown up really fast, but I don't think it's necessarily going to go to her head in the same way that other people, like, you know, when people can recognize you on the street, it's like a weird feeling. And I'm sure, like, I don't get that. I'm not that big. I only have 85,000 subscribers.
Right.
But, like, I would imagine it's a weird thing when people are like, I want to take a picture with you.
It's even weirder once you've had people try to kill you and shit, because then you really start to think twice about these motherfuckers.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. Like, you probably have to pay for security. I think I saw...
Here, every day.
Like, I saw Ben Shapiro on the Nelk Boys or something like that, and he was talking about, he's like, the one thing that is so different about my life and, like, something that I didn't expect is, like, the amount of money I have to spend on security.
Yeah,
on
I
a
wonder
monthly
how many
basis.
he's got. Yeah.
He's like, I have security with my kids, my wife, at the house, like, all of that stuff. I'm like, that's a huge bill to pay every month.
That's scary.
For security.
Yeah. I've known YouTubers who had to pay full-time 24/7 security to literally sit outside their house and just make sure that nobody broke into their house because they had so many stalkers or some. And Logan Paul told me he had the same stalker break into his house like 12 times.
That's scary. Like,
yeah.
That's so scary. I don't want. I was talking to my friend, and I was like, I never want to get to the point on YouTube where I'm that popular. I just want to be here. Like, I want to make content that's relevant and that is helping people, but I never want to get to the point where you're at, where like people are threatening my life and like putting hits out on my family. Like that's not what I want.
When there was a viral thing, you might have seen, where a guy like ran up in our old store and like put a gun to my head and tried to like rob me or whatever on live stream. And that was kind of one of the mind-blowing things about it, was to realize after the fact that he had DM'd me like 20 times and that I never saw any of it. Because why would I click on this random DM? I don't know what he sent me, because when I looked through it, it just said that he had messaged me mad times. But yeah, that was kind of a like, oh, I don't have enough bandwidth to even pay attention to all the weird fucks that are trying to get attention to me. You know, like that was kind of overwhelming. But that and many other incidents I've been through have totally changed how I view going out in public and stuff.
Even myself, like, I have gonna reach 100,000 subscribers soon. But like, I get people who DM me or that email me, and I can't even read my emails. Like, and I'm not a big like YouTube channel. I'm not a big anyone, you know. I just have these people reaching out to me like, you changed my life, or I need help getting a wife. Can you help me? And I'm like, no.
On a one-on-one basis, no. That's going to be a little too time consuming. That's going to be a
hard no for me, dog. Like, first of all, like I've been asked to consult. I've been asked to do all this other stuff. That is my time away from my family, and that is not what I want to be spending time doing. And that's probably why I'll never be this like massive YouTuber or massive content creator, because I just don't care as much to make content all day long and then, you know, edit it and all that other stuff.
But like that right there is the level-headed, reasonable female average attitude on life, which is like, yeah, I want to make content. Yeah, I want to make money. Yeah, I want to have some degree of success, but I'm not going to like become this robot who just cranks out like as much content as possible, which is kind of like the mentality that we associate with a lot of dudes who are super successful, whether it's Fresh and Fit or Andrew Tate, where they're live streaming 4 or 5 nights a week. And they, you know, or even me, it's like, you know, my thing is that I will gladly do like 8 to 10 interviews in a week. And, you know, that has benefited me a lot in terms of just like getting better more quickly at podcasting. But when I look at my fiance's life, I mean, she clearly has a very different mentality. She wants more of a balance. And now that I'm getting a little older and I have a kid, I want balance. It's something I had to like discover a little bit later on, you know?
Yeah, I think it comes with maturity too. I think, you know, as a 20-year-old I was like, I'm hustling. I want to get as much as I can from life. I was listening to Gary Vee. It was literally supercharged on Gary Vee when I was doing all my entrepreneurial stuff. I'm like, I got to grind.
Hustle culture is so alluring when you're broke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you start to get a little bit of money and just like, oh, so you just want me to do this forever?
Yes. That's the lie, though. Like that you can do it forever, that you can, or that you want to do it forever.
There's something redeeming about that. Yeah.
Like you just look at any YouTuber. Like I see like these big YouTubers that retired, like Jenna Marbles. She retired and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like
the woke mob came for her about like the weakest shit ever, and she was just like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, the thing I don't like about it is when all of these people are apologizing. Like, just own your stuff and be like, that was something that we all, like, that's something that we did back in the day. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to, like, that existed. You're right.
I may have taken a different tone at times, but that's generally my attitude whenever anybody's like, oh, look at this offensive thing you did back in the day. It's like, okay, get over it. It was back in the day.
Like, why are we harping?
I did some offensive shit last week that you're not talking about, so you should probably look that up too.
Oh, but like Twitter, when people dig up Twitter feeds and threads from like 2002, or I don't even think Twitter was like
2008, 2006, I think it might actually came out.
Yeah, 2007 or something. Just like, you realize that the world was completely different, and you realize that social media was not at the same crazy state that it's in. People are so addicted and so like they think that their life exists online. And if that person that they created, that avatar that they created online, isn't fully upheld at all times, their whole identity crumbles in front of them. And I refuse to be a part of that, because you see these people that like blow up and they make a crap ton of money and they, you know, they start coming in with their posses and stuff like that. Like, I'm sorry, but that is so cringy to me. Like, I can't imagine ever walking into the room like, yeah, this is my posse. Like, this is my gang. Like, what?
Well, a lot of people take that on because, yeah, it is kind of depressing just being an individual. But if you, as a rapper or whatever, if you walk into a room 20 deep and everybody's rocking chains,
Oh my
it's a
gosh.
wild vibe that you put out there. And I completely understand why it's like pathetic, but it's also like, I've seen the way that rappers kind of use this technique to just like make an appearance. Like if I want, this has occurred to me at various times because me and my girl will just go to the mall and some regular shit. And you know, I don't really like feel the need to have security with me all the time and stuff. But
Don't say that out loud. He has security behind him.
I'm good. I'm my own security. But then like I'll realize that like there is a very different way the rappers move around because when you have two 8-foot tall black guys walking next to you, it makes everybody look at you different. When
Yeah.
you got a big ass chain with your name on it, it makes everybody look way different. When you're coming in 10 people and you're being loud and shit, and like a lot of famous people just like embody all this shit and they move around in such a way that they cause a fucking scene everywhere they go. And sometimes I'm amazed where I will see somebody making a scene like that who I know is like dramatically less famous than me. But meanwhile, I'm like, I have sunglasses and a hoodie on and I like get asked for a photo and I take a photo real quick and I'm not doing anything to draw attention to myself. And it's like my existence is just so much more low key.
And I feel like you're honestly like just sitting here. I feel like you're just like a regular person like me. And I'm not like, it's not like, you know, when you talk to people and you're just like, you're doing too much. Like you're doing the most. Can you just calm?
I feel like, well, it was especially all those years of the store getting treated like by all these people like I was a fucking god just for existing that just made me so disgusted by it and just so much more intent on just like trying to live a normal life, which is, it's then kind of weird because it's like, to me, you know, not wanting to take 40 fucking selfies in a row is kind of like me wanting to be a normal person, but that's not really acceptable when you're an entertainer or whatever. So I do just do it, you know, I just do it, but it is kind of weird. Yeah.
I get the pressure that you're on or other people that are on that they're like in the public eye all the time because like you have to, like I said, you have to maintain this image at all times. Like I said, it's like your mask in a sense, right? And so like if you've built this personality online or you built this personality on Instagram or whatever, and you show up and you're just like a regular person, it looks weird. Like you have to look over the top, like, you know, some of these YouTubers or Instagram models and like TikTokers, I'm just like, chill out sometimes. But I get it. At the same time, I'm just like, y'all are doing the absolute most.
There's a certain vibe that you get from a girl when you meet her and you immediately realize that she looks way better on Instagram.
Yes.
That her BBL looks good on Instagram and like that she's really popular on Instagram. But then meanwhile in real life, she really doesn't look that good. Her butt looks weird as fuck and her like, you know, whole demeanor is like not that of somebody who's actually capable of holding a conversation. Like you are perfectly tuned for Instagram, but here in the real world, it's just like immediately obvious that they are painfully awkward in this situation, and that is so common that it's kind of mind-blowing.
I've seen that. I've talked to, what's crazy is that my life has turned into like stay-at-home mom / I talk to porn stars on a weird like regular basis. I go on other shows and they have porn stars come on. I'm like, how did my life get to this point? But I say that because I'm like, wow, the Instagram photos that you put on or like the things that you're putting out there, you look way different. Like I'm concerned for the guys that you're trying to talk to.
And that's why it's kind of weird for the actual porn stars too, because they also have to look good in motion, naked on camera, which is way different than a lot of the Instagram girls who like, their photos are just so face-tuned and everything that they're really able to like, it's almost like an AI avatar.
Yes.
Because it's very disconnected to like their actual appearance at a certain point, you know?
It's like that Lensa app that like stole everyone's faces.
Yeah. That's real.
It's just that.
Okay, so I'm gonna be honest with you. I think we have done enough here that I'm not even gonna bother to go down the porn wormhole.
Okay.
But we're gonna get back to that in the
Okay.
future for sure.
Okay.
But I think I have a good clickbait title in my head.
Okay.
And I think that for
Trad
sure
mom.
something like that. Yeah.
I love it.
I don't know if they're gonna know what trad mom
My
means,
first trad mom.
my first time writing it in the title of any video ever. No, but like ex-feminist trad.
Turn trad mom.
Yeah. But definitely everybody should check out your YouTube channel and stuff. Like this was kind of like intended to be a contentious argument debate style thing with like multiple like porn stars who care more than me about arguing, you know, porn's benefits or whatever. But we're still gonna do that at some point, right?
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm here for the ride.
Definitely. And everybody check out her channel and her Instagram. Do you want to remind them just in case they're incapable of clicking on the description?
Yeah. You can find me on YouTube at Rebecca Barrett. Very simple. And I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. Let me get my plaque. That's it. I just want to be here. And then I'm on Instagram at I am Rebecca Barrett.
And you've opted out on Twitter?
Yeah, I don't do Twitter.
I found a few other Rebecca Barretts on there, but I was like, yeah, it's probably smart, honestly.
Twitter is like the wormhole that I never want to be a part of. I'm cool off of Twitter.
A lot of very smart people I know, they like have somebody run their Facebook, they have somebody run their Instagram, and they've just decided no more Twitter.
Yeah, I never got into it. I never understood like posting 90 characters. I'm like, why?
140.
140.
And then they turned it to 280, and now it's about to be 5,000, but it's going to be like a click-through thing.
Yeah, so I'm over that already.
Yeah, honestly, it's probably on the way out anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think Elon's using it for other things. So
I think Eli fundamentally knows that he paid way too much for a business that he's not going to be able to really make that much more profitable.
Yeah.
And so we're just sort of seeing him like I do believe that he will probably bring some value to Twitter, but I just don't think he's ever going to like I don't know, it just seems like a terrible use of his time.
yeah, I think he's using it for his AI. I'm just saying.
There's probably meeting girls on there too. Oh man, I've heard things.
I'm sure you have. You're in the world.
I'm going to tell you after. Rebecca, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. Check us out on YouTube, TikTok, Patreon, Instagram, etc. Like, comment, and subscribe. NoJumper.com if you want to support. Thanks.